What follows is an article first broadcast by the BBC's Landward programme on Friday 25th of November 2011. It tries to show the arguments for and against the Scottish Government's proposal to increase the woodland area in Scotland from 17 to 25%. However, the programme is incomplete. It does not state that the huge grants given by the Scottish Governments have attracted millionaires and billionaires from all over the world in a rush to buy hill farms, pushing up farm prices to make it much more difficult for new blood to afford to venture into farming. This could be problematic for the future. It also fails to tackle the other issues that surround increased deforestation, such as the loss of full-time farming jobs and the huge cost of maintaining the roads. Richard Lockes says the forestry provides tens of thousands of jobs in the rural economy of Scotland, yet according to the figures released by the Forestry Commission, there are only 6,300 forestry jobs in Scotland approximately. The loss of farming jobs means fewer families with children, so the local school will close with the loss of work for the local school support staff. Tourism and fishing businesses also suffer because of inconsiderate forestry methods. Our local inn is struggling to survive, and even property developers are scared of buying the many empty farmhouses because they too can see the community is dying. Thus, the Scottish rural communities are being destroyed by afforestation, contrary to the Scottish Government's pledge to protect these communities. So if you do have a view and you wish it to be heard, then please consider all aspects of afforestation, not just the arguments put forward by the politicians. And remember, you can't eat trees.
There's an ongoing debate at the moment about the future shape of our landscape. The government plans to increase the amount of land used for forestry, but there are fears that this will impact on our ability to produce enough food to meet future domestic and global demands.
We humans are greedy creatures. We demand a lot from the land. We want to use it to grow food, to produce energy, for recreation, and to build on.
So what is the land for? Well, that's a question that anybody who's involved in rural affairs has to wrestle with all the time. Is it for food production? Is it for forestry, carbon capture, wildlife, or even leisure? And with just one small planet, how can you possibly balance all these usually competing demands?
At the moment, around 17% of our land is devoted to forestry. The Scottish Government wants that to rise to 25% by the last half of this century.
As a country, we've got a great opportunity to tackle climate change by expanding forestry cover, for instance, and also, of course, the forestry sector employs tens of thousands of people in a rural economy. So it's a very important sector to Scotland. So there's an environmental benefit, there's an economic and employment benefit at the same time.
According to the United Nations Food Organization, by the year 2050, food production will need to increase by 70%. Annual meat production alone needs to increase by 200 million tonnes. But across the country, hill farms that were used to produce lamb are now being planted up with trees.
It's something that the National Sheep Association isn't happy about. Their development officer, George Milne, took me to see a farm in the Borders that had been swallowed up by plantation.
Up until recently, this was a productive sheep hill farm, 1,300 acres, and it was carrying about 800 ewes.
I mean, suddenly planted up?
Yeah, totally planted up.
So is this a story that you're seeing all around here?
Very common in this area and across a lot of areas in Scotland. We're losing some of the most productive sheep hill farms. This is some of the ideal ground for trees to be planted on, and that's the problem that we have. The good ground for growing the trees is also some of the most productive ground for the sheep.
The Scottish Government wants 10,000 hectares of forestry to be planted every year. Forest Enterprise Scotland, the timber-producing wing of the Forestry Commission, aims to plant 1,000 hectares. The other 9,000 is expected to come from private businesses who can apply for grants to plant timber.
The average Forestry cover in European countries is about 37%, in Scotland it's only 17%, and we've got lots of land in Scotland. So the question is, how can we have an integrated land use policy? How on the one hand can we deliver food production, which is essentially important to Scotland, it's something we're good at. Our farmers, of course, play a leading role in achieving that. At the same time, forestry is very, very important, and we want more forestry in Scotland to tackle climate change, because forestry acts as a carbon sink and so on. They're not mutually exclusive, food production and forestry.
What we would like to see happening is a mix. We're not against tree planting, but we are against it when it takes over a whole farm. So what we see would be if there was a way of having a better incentive, so that if a farm was sold, then a proportion of it was only allowed to be planted, which would then leave a stable sheep enterprise and productive sheep enterprise to work on that land.
What surprises me is the sheer scale of this plantation. I've come up this track 3/4 of a mile, and it's been young trees that have been newly planted all the way, and as you can see, it extends up to that ridge and beyond.
Local consultation is very important. That's why we're encouraging local councils, local authorities in Scotland, like in the Borders, to have their own local forestry strategies, because local people being consulted on the local environment and land is the best way to ensure that we do have that balance.
And if you want to feed into the discussion, the government have set up a specialist group looking at precisely this issue.
The Woodland Expansion Advisory Group are currently consulting to find the best ways of achieving that government target. And you've got until the end of January to get your views to them. You can find details of how to do that on our website.
If you have a